The lands of Dorne seem like an endless sea of dunes. It's easy to get lost in the shifting sands. But the Dune Vipers call this land home and know each grain of sand's place. Using their knowledge of terrain, they excel in guerrilla tactics, harassing enemies with their nets and spears, ensnaring foes before heading in for the final strike. Best when paired with allies, the Dune Vipers can stand on their own when needs must. Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video we're going to be talking about the House Martell Dune Vipers. Now these guys are a real recent release, but I had put out that call to, or that request, I guess, to see what people were looking for out of some of the next discussions for the channel. And the Dune Vipers are one that someone had requested that I really would like to talk about because I think they're very unique and interesting and have some weird nuances about them that's worth discussing. Outside that, I do want to thank everyone who's responded to that video, kind of listing out some of the things they'd like to see. I've been playing this game for a very long time, so I know what I want out of my discussions. But I also want to be able to service the community on top of that. So it's really nice to be able to see what kind of things people are looking for or videos that they want me to revisit. So I do look forward to trying to get to some of those videos that folks requested. So it'll just take some time, but there's some really neat ones in there. So I'm looking forward to going over those. But let's go ahead and hop back into the Dune Vipers here. So the Dune Vipers are an infantry unit that don't come with any attachment, but they do come with 5 unique sculpts within the box. So lots of diversity in this faction. The Martell sculpts have been nothing short of amazing so far, so I'm really happy to see these guys as well. So coming in at 6 points, we get a unit with speed 6. They have the melee attack ability called Spear and Net. This hits on 4s or better, and then has a 7/6/4 decay stat. The defensive saves are looking at a 4+ for defense and then a 6+ for morale, so they're pretty middle of the road there. The Spear and Net melee attack ability has attached to it, after completing this attack, the defender becomes weakened. The Dune Vipers also come with the ability Counter Strike that states, each time this unit is attacked with a melee attack, for each miss, the attacker suffers 1 hit. They also have the ability Gang Up, which states all friendly units' melee attacks gain +1 to hit and +1 attack die on enemies that are engaged with this unit and at least one other friendly unit. So at face value, this looks like it's a unit that has some supportive elements, but still wants to get in the mix with it with other units too. Hitting on a 4+ is not the most amazing stat for a unit that's kind of supposed to be more melee focused, but that kind of balances out with the rest of the card. Like a 7/6/4 stat for decay means that these guys are going to be quite sustainable for a long time, and they're going to be quite hurtful until they start really losing some of those, or until they get down to their final rank at least. Being speed 6 means that this unit's perfectly capable of kind of hunting on the flanks, so to speak. And the 4/6 defensive stats, just because you're in the middle of things on average doesn't mean that you're particularly bad. I mean, a 6+ is a little bit over average on melee on a 2d6. I still think it's kind of in between. I think the stats are like it's between a 6 and a 7 for average, but that's neither here nor there. The ability to make your opponent weakened when you're hitting with the Spear and Net just means that you're going to have a lot more survivability given those stats, because your opponent's going to have to reroll every hit they take against you, and with a speed 6 unit, I would imagine that you're probably getting the jump on your opponent with this unit. So in addition, I always love it when a unit has like internal synergy, and being able to hit your opponent first and weaken them and then have them have to worry about Counter Strike means that they either have to really balance how they're going to be dealing with this unit or this combat phase, where they might want to try and get the condition token off of them first and then try to hit you, which just kind of slows down the tempo of the game and allows you to take some advantages that your opponent might not have seen coming, since they didn't choose to attack you right away because they were worried about Counter Strike. Now, Gang Up here is really nice because I think that the unit definitely has the numbers to push itself to where it can kind of function on its own, but when you're looking at what Gang Up can do, if we think about just what this unit does, if someone is engaged with the unit they're engaged with, like if they have a gang up target, they end up taking themselves from a 764 attack stat that hits on 4s to an 875 attack stat that hits on 3s, because remember that gang up does feed the unit that has gang up. They just need to have someone to enable it. Additionally, being able to make your other units a little bit more combat effective is quite nice. There is a good amount of access to critical blow or precision within this army, and hitting on 3s is not uncommon. So being able to hit on 2s, re-rolling on a charge, fishing for 6s can be something that is a sound strategy as long as you've got these guys there engaging things. So one of the things I wanted to talk first about the Dune Vipers is an interesting comparison. Now, I think that oftentimes people will talk in general about how comparative analysis is a little bit rough in wargaming, especially when you're looking at faction to faction, because they just don't function the same, so the comparative elements aren't quite balanced. But within the Martells, we get that opportunity to have a pretty comparative analysis between the Dune Vipers and the Sunspear Dervishes. Now, the Sunspear Dervishes have the same point cost, they have the same defensive stats, the same speed, and the exact same attack, minus the fact that they use Dervish blades. So one would say that maybe you could look at these two and say that one is better than the other, but I think that that's kind of a little bit of a trap, because and they are so similar. So if we just revisit the Dervishes, I think I talked about them in the Martell video, or in the Prince Doran video once, but all those stats on the right side of or left side of their card are the same. But then when we go over to the left or right side of the card, we see they have the Order Swift Retreat that just states after an enemy completes a melee attack on this unit performs 1 retreat action. Then they also come with Elusive Escape to synergize with that, where it says this unit may reroll any retreat distance dice, and then enemies that this unit disengages from may not pivot and become weakened. And then their Dervish Blades bring precision, and then they also state when attacking enemies that have not activated yet this round, they gain critical blow. So I know I had said that, critical blow precision is something that you can find in this army. These guys don't hit on 3s, so they don't get to turn it into 2s, fishing for those rerolls, but still it's pretty decent. And when we look at what they kind of do here, the Dune Vipers seem to want to tie up something and kind of go buddy cop style on one of your enemy's units, whereas this unit, the Dervishes, like to kind of hit and run and just cause a bunch of chaos, because most times Elusive Escape is something you have to get from an attachment, but these guys just have it baked in. Now, I think that with both of these units being 6 points, they're much more complementary than comparative. So you are getting the gang up bonus from the Vipers to help out with that precision and critical blow. If you have the Dervishes go in and they don't end up wiping a unit, or getting them, or they at least get them down to a point where they're manageable by the Dune Vipers, these guys can then burn out of combat if your opponent decides to focus on them instead of the Dune Vipers, because the Dune Vipers have that counter strike ability, so your opponent's more likely to hit the Dervishes. But when they do that, the Dervishes get to Swift Retreat, and then while they leave, they're weakened. If your Dune Vipers put the weakened on them first, then they're just going to have a really difficult time. I can see a lot of people getting headaches dealing with a Sunspear Dervish and Dune Viper combination in terms of an offense. The package is only 12 points without any attachments, and it can cause a lot of grief for your opponent in that whichever unit they attack, they're not going to be extremely happy with, because if they attack the Dervishes instead of the Vipers, it means that Swift Retreat can proc, and then you can just charge in again, getting your rerolls to hitting on 3s instead, and then having that 875 attack stat. And that's, like I said, before you put any attachments in here, and these guys just have built-in precision all the time. You might not always get the critical blow based on your opponent having to do the Swift Retreat business or proccing Swift Retreat, but if they use the swords to make that happen, then you do get to take advantage of that critical blow rule that's attached to Dervish blades. So I think I don't pay too much attention to what the internet hive mind thinks about how units function or how good or bad they are. I just don't find it beneficial for my way of enjoying the game. But I would think that it would be a little bit more of a trap to say that one unit is better than the other when looking at these two, because they are so similar that they allow you to start this comparative analysis. But I feel like they're much more a package deal than they are something that needs to be looked at separately. The dervishes can cause a lot of disruption, and if you're looking for that in your list but you don't want the Dune Vipers, then they're perfectly fine to go for fitting that role. Whereas if you want a little bit more control or support, then the Dune Vipers might be where you want to look at, because they can really be a pain in the butt for your opponent to deal with. So shifting our perspective over to the attachments, there is a giant elephant in the room, and it does not come from the Free Folk nor the Golden Company, nor does it come from my logo. It comes in the package of the Dervish Captain. So for 2 points, we end up kicking this unit up to an 8-point investment. But when you're looking at the inexpensive units that the Martells have access to and the effectiveness of them, I really don't think it's that big of a deal to invest 8 points into a unit, especially when we look at what the Dervish Captain brings. And that's going to be the order Sow Discord. So you trigger this at the start of any turn. You target one enemy unit within long range, and they suffer one morale test with -1 to their roll for each of their destroyed ranks. On a failure, they lose all abilities until the end of the round. The big kicker here, the reason why you want this guy so much, is because of the ability Disrupt. It simply states enemies engaged with this unit suffer -1 to hit. So I think we've all played against Veterans of the Watch long enough to know that Disrupt in conjunction with Counter-Strike is a real pain in the butt to deal with. And when you're thinking about the the Dune Vipers, they also have the ability to just get weakened on your opponent whenever they attack them. So it's doubly annoying, almost triply annoying at that point. So when I had first picked up the Martells and started looking at them, the Dervish Captain wasn't something I was extremely excited about. I was like, oh yeah, Disrupt is kind of cool, but Sow Discord is like really a little bit more on the corner case side for me. And I feel like in this attachment package, it almost feels like you're paying more points for the Sow Discord than you would be for the Disrupt. But with the Dune Vipers, they really take advantage of both of these. Being able to have your opponent lose all abilities until the end of the round, especially since they might have taken a rank or two in the mix of combat, can really make sure that your opponent doesn't have a whole lot of retaliation or can't pull out any of those Hail Mary plays when they're engaged with the Dune Vipers or the Dune Vipers and another unit. So I feel like the Dervish Captain really does add a lot of added value to the Dune Viper unit, and if I have the 2 points for it, I have a feeling that he will always make it into my list attached to these Dune Vipers, because Disrupt and Counter-Strike is so amazing with the ability to give out Weakened regularly, and so Discord is kind of like the awesome cherry on the top for this particular unit. So if you are a little bit more pinched for points and you still want to make this unit a little bit more effective, we can go ahead and take a look at the low investment of the Spear Lord that we get from the Royal Guard Spearman. So for 1 point, we get the simple ability Boldness and Courage that states each time this unit attacks, if it has full ranks, it gains +1 attack die. Otherwise, it's treated as having +1 rank for attack dice. So that ends up doing a lot for the Dune Vipers themselves. They end up going from that 764 attack stat to an 875 attack stat, and then when you get Gang Up in there, you're going into a 986 attack stat, and that's pretty devastating. That's a lot of attack dice for a unit, especially if they're hitting on 4s. It is what it is. I guess if you're ganged up, you're hitting on 3s, so it really doesn't matter all that much. For the 1 point, I think you get a lot of value out of Boldness and Courage on this unit because their attack values are so high and sustainable already. But again, I really like that the Dervish Captain, and I think that I would really only be pulling in the Spear Lord if I were pinched for points, or if maybe I just didn't feel like, Disrupt plus Counter-Strike was going to get me anywhere, which I really have a hard time, reconciling that mindset. But definitely, if you're on a budget, then you can go spend your sand dollars on Spear Lord. So shifting our focus from attachments, I wanted to take a look at one particular NCU that's available to the Martells, and that's going to be Oberyn Martell, the Prince of Dorne. So for 4 points, we end up getting the ability Hot Tempered. This is an influence ability that states, while influencing a friendly unit, each time an enemy attacks this unit with a melee attack, before resolving that attack, the attacker suffers 2 hits plus 1 hit for each of the defender's remaining ranks. So Oberyn Martell can do a ton of work with this particular unit. Now, if you're wanting to double down on making sure your opponent doesn't touch your Dune Vipers, you can go ahead and, if you have like the Dervish Captain and Oberyn Martell's influence, they're going to be taking a ton of damage just for wanting to attack the Dune Viper unit. You're looking at taking the Counterstrike, Weakened, Disrupt hits, plus Oberyn's Hot Tempered hits, because this unit should typically have most of its ranks and shouldn't slip more below down that 2 point between the random healing that I plan on doing with this unit and the relative survivability of it with how much they're going to be able to weaken things and getting that -1 to hit. Now, one of the other options you have with Oberyn Martell is that your Dune Vipers do like to have a partner in combat, and sometimes that means, if we're not thinking about the case of the Sunspear Dervishes, your opponent will be more incentivized to attack the unit that is not the Dune Vipers because they won't have this massive retaliation coming back at them for deciding to take an action against them. But with Oberyn Martell influencing that other unit, it means that your opponent's kind of put between a rock and a hard place where if they attack the Dune Vipers, they're going to be -1 to hit. They're going to take a hit for every miss they have, and they're weakened. Whereas if they attack the other unit that they're engaged with, they're still weakened, hopefully weakened, and then every time they take an attack against them, they're going to be taking 2 plus 1 hit for each of their remaining ranks. And they just kind of get into this point where no matter what they do, they're kind of in a horrible place. Even if they retreat, they're still staring down the barrel of 2 units that get to pivot. And they might just say, screw it, I'm not going to deal with this unit anymore. I'm going to go after some more juicy targets because I've already crippled this unit down to not being extremely functional. So I know that Oberyn Martell does have an opportunity cost in that he is a really powerful commander, but I think that this version of his NCU is really good in conjunction with this unit. You can really pull a lot of sneaky, skeezy stuff out on your opponent and just say, whatever you do to me, you're not going to have a good time because of it. You don't just get to do whatever you want without any retaliation. And for that, I think that Oberyn Martell is a really strong pick for this unit. So to round out our discussion on the Dune Vipers, I do want to bring up a commander that has some interesting synergies with this unit, and that's going to be Harmon Uller, the Lord of Hellholt. As a commander attachment, he ends up bringing the ability Supply Aid that states at the start of a friendly turn, this unit suffers up to 3 wounds, and then you restore 1 plus that many wounds to one other friendly unit within long range. He also brings the ability Iron Resolve that states this unit gains +1 to panic test rolls and suffers -1 wound from failing panic tests. Now, Harmon Uller is not the person that I want on my Dune Vipers. I want him supporting those Dune Vipers. Supply Aid means that Harmon Uller wants to be in a unit that can kind of hold its own or dig its heels into the sand, so to speak, and start using Supply Aid to fuel up some of these units that have been taking some damage that have like those middle of the road stats. And with Iron Resolve, it's just another way to make sure that your opponent can't kind of get some sneaky panic bombs unless they're really leaning into it with like some Baratheon garbage. Also, your opponent still, it's not horribly de-incentivized for attacking him, but they're going to be too busy dealing with your frontal assault of Sun Spears and Dune Vipers to really even worry about what Harmon Uller is doing back here. So before I get too deep into going into Harmon Uller's cards and how they function for him, I did want to talk about the unit that I would prefer to put him into, and it's kind of a toss-up. It really depends on what your points are looking like, but one option is the Sunspear Royal Guard. The reason why I appreciate these guys in there is because they're extremely sustainable and they have a good attack stat where it's like that 7/7/4. They're not going to be they're going to be able to hold their own for a while, even if Harmon Uller is supply aiding from the Royal Guard into another unit. And then having a 4+ defense save with Harmon Uller's adjusted 4+ morale stat, -1 wound from failed panic tests, means that this unit's going to be extremely difficult to get rid of. So they can go up and exist in the middle of the table where you're going to be fueling back some of these more vulnerable units and not really worry about things too much. They also offer the ability of martial training, so you can, if for whatever reason you happen to get this unit mixed up in with the Dune Vipers, you're getting weak on them, vulnerable, re-rolling all your attack dice, and then the Royal Spear are hitting on 2s with an 8/8/5 attack stat. So that's pretty decent. And again, your opponent's not going to be really incentivized into attacking these guys because they have shield wall, and if you're, rubbing Oberyn's holy oils on them, with his influence, you're ending up with a really retaliatory unit that your opponent's not going to want to attack. But then again, not wanting to attack the Dune Vipers either, you kind of put them in that hard place, right? Outside of that, if you're looking for a more budget attachment or budget unit for him, the Martell Spearmen are just really good for his kit, and specifically, we'll get into more of, and maybe this is the point where it comes up, but for the 5 points, which is, a couple points cheaper, you don't get the greatest defensive stats at a 5+, 6+, but Harmon Uller gives you that 5+ morale and -1 wound from panic. The only issue is that you're wanting to supply aid from this unit, so as hopefully your opponent's not getting into them, which they are de-incentivized from doing as well. Because you have the order set for charge that just states that when this unit successfully charged on its flank or front, I get to perform 1 melee attack on the attacker before they roll their attack dice. Another big benefit for these guys is that you get that tactical reposition ability, and the Sunspear Dervishes along with the Dune Vipers really like getting into the sides of people, or at least one of those units needs to get into the side so that the other one can kind of get the benefits from the front. So being able to get tactical reposition is a really big deal. Having Harmon in this unit is nice. I think if I have the points, I'll go for the Royal Spear Guard, but if I don't have the points, the Spearmen are perfectly fine as well. The thing to focus on here is that no matter what you do, your opponent's going to be punished for attacking your stuff. You have the Dune Vipers have elusive escape and can weaken your opponent. Oberyn Martell can make it so that your opponent's taking hits for attacking you, and then the Dune Vipers themselves have that disrupt counterstrike combo if you're paying the extra 2 points. So no matter what, you're now bringing 3 different units that are going to be punishing, or 4 different units technically, that are going to be punishing your opponent regardless of what they attack. And that's really where a lot of the benefit comes from playing this like Harmon Uller focus type list with these particular units. So taking a look at Harmon Uller's cards, this is where you can kind of see more of my punishing you for attacking me type thing, and that's going to be set for charge. This triggers when a friendly unit is successfully charged before the attacker performs their melee attack. If that friendly unit is not engaged with another enemy and was charged from the front or flank, it performs 1 melee attack action on the attacker before the attacker resolves their melee attack. So the cool thing about this, and it's like cool in quotes, but if your opponent somehow ends up getting the jump on the Sunspear or the Dune Vipers, and you play set for charge, it might not be something that they're thinking of right away. And then not only are they getting attacked by this unit that has a pretty hefty attack stat, but they're also going to become weakened for it, and then you're going to be triggering off that counter-strike disrupt thing if you've paid that extra points for it. So set for charge is just another sneaky way of saying your opponent, if they want to try and attack one of the units that doesn't have a whole lot of retaliatory ability on them, you get to punish them for it anyways. Or if they are deciding to just bite the bullet and go for it, they're getting doubly punished for attacking you. So I think that set for charge is just such a fantastic card when we look at the kind of setup that I've made. It's almost like I've finished building a list here, but just haven't officially done it yet. The next card that Harmon Uller brings is Battle Endurance. This triggers at the start of a friendly turn. You target 1 friendly combat unit and attach this card to that unit until the end of the game. While attached, this unit's melee attacks gain the following bonuses based on the game round, and the effects are cumulative. On turn 3 or more, you re-roll any misses. On turn 4, you claim Sundering. On turn 5, you get Critical Blow. And turn 6, you're rolling +2 attack dice. So Battle Endurance on any of these units that I've talked about is pretty good. It gives them all abilities that they don't really have. Even when you look at something like the Sunspear Dervishes, they're getting Critical Blow all the time instead of having to wait for your opponent to activate the unit. So I think this particular card on the Dune Vipers themselves can do a lot of work too, because now your opponent needs to deal with them, but again is de-incentivized for doing so because you have that disrupt counterstrike business. But if they're re-rolling all their misses, they gain that Sundering and have Critical Blow, they're going to be doing a lot of work. And then +2 attack dice with the stat they happen to bring and Harmon Uller able to keep them healthy for a long time just can turn them into a devastating cleanup unit. You know, as the game goes longer, sometimes your combat effectiveness is lowered because, of course, you've lost units throughout the game. But with having 2 instances of battle endurance available to you and the way that the Dervishes and Dune Vipers end up stacking their combat prowess, you're just dangerous until the very end of the game here. And I think battle endurance is just a fantastic card for the Martells. The final card Harmon Uller brings is Spiteful Truce. This triggers when an enemy unit passes a morale test. You target one friendly combat unit in long range of that unit. They restore 2 wounds +1 wound for each of their destroyed ranks. So Spiteful Truce can be a real pain in the butt. And one of the big reasons for its effectiveness within this army is that the Martells, by and large, or for the most part, don't have a ton of ways to manipulate your morale stats, so they're not like throwing a ton of vicious attacks out there, getting a whole bunch of like gruesome, what's the ability when you're spread fear or whatever. You know, they're just not doing a lot of damage through morale. They're like, if they get it, cool. If not, they're, you know, not worried about it. So your opponent is likely to pass a lot of their morale tests or panic tests when you get done attacking them. And, you know, having the ability to say, oh, cool, good job, opponent. You did something that you wanted to do. You passed that morale test. You're not losing more models. But instead, I'm just going to go ahead and fill this unit back up. Spiteful Truce can be a real pain in the butt. I think I probably said that already, but it can't be understated. Or it can't be overstated, sorry. With Spiteful Truce in combination with Supply Aid, you're just able to keep your units around for a really long time. It almost feels like when you're playing Harmon Uller, you're kind of like playing a Trixie Night's Watch style list, like at least the early ones where healing was extremely prominent for them. Not that it isn't anymore, it's just, you know, it's just a statement, I guess. But Spiteful Truce, really powerful. I don't think any of the cards that Harmon Uller brings to the Martell deck are bad. And then when you combine that their base tactics deck is extremely tricky, you're ending up bringing a lot more resilience with Harmon Uller that the deck just doesn't have on its own. And that makes these units that we've been talking about extremely dangerous up until that bitter end. I think that one of the most frustrating things that you can do against a Martell player is playing against Harmon Uller. He just kind of tilts the perspective of the unit or the army a little bit, and it can get a lot of work done. When we take a look at you know, what's included in his kit, if we're bringing Oberyn the NCU, we have Harmon Uller as our commander. That means that we can get Oberyn Martell into the list, and that just puts a lot more pressure on our opponent in terms of victory points. So I think that this particular list, it hasn't built itself, so to speak, but you've definitely got the starting of a very powerful Harmon Uller army. So overall, I'm really excited about the Dune Viper release for House Martell. I know they're getting a bunch of cavalry soon, which is also really exciting. We've got our lance cavalry and a little bit more of a skirmishy cavalry. But this unit in particular just adds a whole nother element to messing around with your opponent. I think, you know, I'm kind of at a toss-up. I know my next tournament is coming up in January here, and I'm really split between either playing the Stark so that I can get Roderick Cassell back on the table, or bringing out the Martells because I really would like to play this Harmon Uller damned if you do, damned if you don't, attack me style list. So let me know what you think in the comments below. How are you going to utilize your Dune Vipers? You know, what are you thinking about putting on them in terms of attachments, or are you just going to run them naked? Otherwise, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, and I'll look forward to making the next one for you soon.